Do you need your fix of rover combat? Do you want to see a land battleship take on multiple grids at once? Do you want to see a small rover avoid some heavy, large rover fire? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Wasteland. Now let me brief you on tonight's scenario. This is the final event of the server, and the final event of any server always ends in carnage. The main goal for the players is to attack this town, take out the rotorheads defending it, destroy any other players that stand in their way, and capture this square right here. It's not a difficult mission, but with so many parties at play here, it is going to be a crazy one. Now the first rover on the scene was our Mortal Engine by G. We were expecting great things for this one, but we did have some issues with things not loading in, and sadly G hit a lamppost and it crippled the Mortal Engine. This gave a chance for the road ahead battleship to start surrounding it and pounding it into the ground, and that was the end of the Mortal Engine. It was a very, very short-lived battle for it, but at the same time it got a little bit of glory. Now out of nowhere, Arid appeared, speeding across the dunes in his speedy little rover right past the road-ahead battleship that was quite slow to react. He managed to take out a number of the turrets and break into the city. Of course, this was early days. The city was absolutely full of turrets and road-ahead creations, so at every corner there was a nasty little surprise. As the battleship turned around, he took some cover behind the buildings as some of G's smaller rovers managed to make into the city. This was an exciting moment, but sadly G lost connection and the other one was destroyed. Arid didn't really have too much choice at this point. He was taking too much fire and he had to bail out of a rover and tried to make a run for hide in one of the city buildings. There was attempts by smaller rovers to recon the outskirts of the city. These were quickly chased away by rotorheads. Then GDE arrived, with 2 artillery tanks and the Mammoth trailing behind going down the hill. They worried that it wouldn't be able to get over the mound that surrounded this giant pit, but it did so. But just as they had tackled one obstacle, RAB pounced on them with the smaller rovers. GDE were completely caught off guard by these small, nimble rovers. The rockets ripped into their wheels, damaging them. GDE did their best to respond with accurate gunfire. Sadly, the Mammoth's turret wasn't configured properly at this time. The members of GDE quickly struggled to resolve the issues, but still it wasn't firing, so they had to do anything possible to stop these RAB rovers from tearing their large grids apart. One of them took to ramming, the other one took to trying to take up a more defensive position, and they managed to turn the tables of this ambush, forcing the RAB rovers away. While all this was happening on the other side of the crater, right into the side of a skyscraper, G drove one of his giant ship rovers. And the admin team and I were gobsmacked. We were a bit shocked. We only found out later that the skyscraper hadn't loaded in for him in time. He then attempted to thread it between 2 of the skyscrapers and unload some of his larger rovers. This ship got absolutely panned by everything the rotorheads had, from large turrets mounted on buildings to small rovers trying to blow things up. This was an insane waste of resources in my opinion. It would have been much better for him to keep this grid back, but still, you know, he went for it. G's ally had also brought in a tan and white rover that received some very explosive reception from the rotorheads as they tried to take it out. Of course, all turrets were focused on it and the small rotorhead rovers did their best to engage it. It ended in a nasty mess though, when a rotorhead explosive truck detonated behind it, severing some of its vital internals. Now back out on the dunes, GDE had managed to wrestle control of the Mammoth's turret. They'd got the weapons working and the turret tracking. At the same time, RAB had brought in one of their larger ship rovers. GDE quickly engaged it, eliminating its turrets, still having some weapons issues though aboard the Mammoth, something that they need to fix critically before more players got involved in this one. RAB lost the ship, but was still doing some devastating damage to GDE with their small grids. Now next to enter the party was DV8. They entered in with a big blue truck rover that looked awesome and 2 smaller little rovers as well. And there was this poor chap in the background here in this little respawn rover with, well, he had a bit of difficulty getting down the hill, you could say. He did manage to survive though, and actually even get into the city with this, so this was quite a shock. Now while we were all laughing away at the roly-poly rover, Luke Goblin came in from behind, and Luke Goblin came in from behind with some very accurate shots hitting the Mammoth, and I thought it was all over for the Mammoth at this time, but as per usual, Space Engineers has its hiccups, and it crashed. When Space Engineers crashed, it re-rolled it back and they managed to get their turret back. But still, if this wouldn't have rolled back, GDE would have been out of a turret on the Mammoth. So great shots here, Luke. Sadly, they didn't count because of the rollback. Rollback though, Von Ruger thought it'd be a good idea to engage with this small tank and reverse right under the wheel well of the Mammoth. I thought it was going to be crushed for sure, but at the last moment he sticks it in reverse, hits the right stick, and he gets straight out the way, just before the crash. Sadly, he wasn't as lucky after the restart, as Luke Goblin lined straight up with him with the missile launchers and blew that tiny grid to Kingdom Come. Sadly, this restart also affected DV8, who had a few shots fired their way, losing 2 of their small rovers to the Mammoth and its massive artillery cannons. Then all of a sudden it appeared like everyone showed up. We had MBS firing from one of the crater sides, RAB appeared with the rest of their rovers on another, and the Rotorheads was stuck in the middle. The big battleship was getting hammered from both RAB from behind and NBS from the front. It made the smart move though to pull back, and this caused RAB and MBS to start engaging each other. With the Rotorhead rover retreating, RAB decided to push forward the attack. NBS and RAB clashed, with Luke Goblin striking at the rear of RAB. This was a really exciting battle because MBS then tried to distract RAB out of the city area and lure them into a trap. They fell for it and got engaged from the side. RAB retaliated though, pulling back in towards the city, and no one really suffered a great deal of damage. Now the battle continues quite heated between RAB and MBS. Even though that they pulled back, they result to a bit of long range fire with the artillery pieces. RAB decide to regroup and push into the square of the city, using the city as a bit of cover from the long range fire, and MBS do the same, regrouping on the outskirts of the inner crater. At this point, everything starts to get really crazy. We've got so many different factions involved, I can't tell you who's who here. We've definitely got RAB, we've got a bit of MBS. Josh joins in with his big war rigs that you'll see circling the city as well, taking fire from everyone. And the main focus, what seems to be happening, is MBS are pushing from the top of the screen and RAB are trying to hold the square. Now, the battle ends with both NBS and RAB both having sort of fingers in the pie, you could say. But it only ends like this because of a crash. The fight here is super intense. MBS keep doing probing attacks, but just because the amount of firepower that RAB have in the centre prevents them from going any further. Luke Goblin is also pushing around the side of what I believe to be his third sort of meatball rover, and this one once again delivers a big blow, but just gets himself in a situation that's a little bit too hot, and the rover starts to come apart. Now there's so many mini battles everywhere, I was struggling jumping to try and cover everything, but on the outskirts we've also got these small rover battles where we've got some of G's Stugs engaging, I think, one of Alice's rovers. We've obviously got the little mini RAB rover dodging and evading and doing these cool moves as it shoots rockets, and the big rovers are just struggling to take the small rovers out. I think it's fantastic. It's lovely when a plan comes together and you manage to pull off some sweet skids and drift away from some rovers. But yeah, it was really intense at this point. We'll try and do a breakdown now from an aerial view. Right, now over to our aerial helicopter correspondent. Right, Aaron, okay, we have NBS on the top ridge there, you can see. We have Josh and his teammate pushing in from the left there. We've got Arid towards the right, and we have RAB in the centre. We've also got DV8 off somewhere in the distance, and there is Luke Goblin patrolling around looking for snacks. Back down to you on the ground for more, Aaron. RAB did their best to hold the backside of town. They used one of their rovers to push out, distract Arid and distract some of the rovers, and also offer some protection for the 2 rovers that are defending the city. This did work to some degree, but it did cause one of the rovers to take some serious damage. Now, while the battle in the city was intensifying, Malric came from behind in his small little tank, attacking MBS and Loot. And it didn't go too well. He lost his turret instantly and became, well, just quite a small little tank. At the same time, the Mammoth was receiving repairs, trying to get its main weapon retrofitted so it could launch another attack. Time was really running out for players. RAB was still holding the centre. Josh was attempting to circle the town looking for any access route in. Just at that moment, DV8 came from behind in their big blue rover. The railgun operator was eager to fire, but with the cannon being rear mounted, just couldn't line up a shot. The blue rover though did manage to almost finish off one of the RAB rovers. It fired so many missiles into that thing, the weapons on that RAB rover were almost useless. But still, rockets came from multiple sides and the wheels were soon shot out of the blue rover. A really cool looking grid, especially with a little lowering door at the back where other smaller DV8 rovers could come from. Still, the battle was raging on though. Now I don't know if this was planned, but a giant counterattack happened. NBS pushed from one side, DV8 pushed from the other with the remaining grids they had, GDE pushed with the Mammoth from the other side, and even Josh got in on the action as he kept circling the place. This was critical. There was damaged grids, everything was falling apart, grids were getting broken, Josh was getting absolutely hammered from multiple directions, but at the same time taking out multiple wheels. RAB were holding onto the centre by the skin of the teeth. G had somehow managed to get a tank in the middle. I don't know how this had happened. So that was it. The server crashed and it was the end of the evening. We'd already gone over for an extra hour at this point, so I want to leave it in your hands. Who do you think should be the MVP of this match? Write it down in the comment section below and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching the video.